Okay, this program today is on movie theaters, but only the Tyler theaters up to 1940. I've talked to several other people about what's happened since 1940, but that with only one exception, I sort of stopped my whole thing at 1940. And this program is really based a lot on the research of Johnny Kennedy, who's a former librarian at Tyler Junior College. And she did an article for Chronicles back in 1985, but chances are a lot of y'all may not have seen that particular article in 1985. So I've taken that, added to some of James Wilkins's maps, and we're going from there. Also, it's unfortunate, but I am only focusing on the white movie theaters because the Tyler newspaper just didn't really allow much advertising from black businesses. And I can find the names of them in the city directories. There would be the Rapides, the White Star, the Lincoln, and the Palace. And I'm not actually really sure what dates they start and end with, but this particular program will be focusing on the white theaters around and just off the square in Tyler. Hope maybe sometime later I'll be able to do something more, but it's going to take a lot more digging. I'm actually right now working on a project where tomorrow I'm going to Texas A&M to use a database of African American newspapers because it's just hard around here to do some of this research. Okay, the first practical motion picture was developed in 1891 by William Kennedy Laurie Dixon, working for Thomas Edison's laboratory. The kinetoscope was a coin-in-the-slot peep show device that permitted a person to see about 15 seconds of film, showing people and objects in wonderfully lifelike movement. The first public demonstration was in New York City on April the 14th, 1894, and within 4 years, that quickly, the early movies had come to Tyler. Here's a general timeline of the movie theaters in Tyler through 1940. Some lasted only a year. There were often more than one operating at a time, and by 1940 we had 6, all downtown. The earliest movie shown in Tyler was, believe it or not, one shown at Marvin Methodist Church in March of 1898. The cover of the program stated that it was the world's latest sensation, Edison's startling invention, those immense, living, moving pictures. Admission was to be 35 cents, reserved seats 50 cents, children 25 cents, with the church to keep 40%. I'm going to break the theaters into decades by when they were started to give you a better idea of where they were at any one time. So first, I'm starting with 1905 to 1909. There was a long lag between that first showing in 1898 and the next mention of movies in Tyler. The Grand Opera House, located at 110 South Spring, where the jail is going up right now, where the old jail used to be, the real old jail, the one prior to, well anyway, y'all know where it is. It was the welfare office for a while, big brick building. It had opened in 1889 and presented touring road companies, vaudeville acts, and minstrel shows, as well as a farewell performance of Sarah Bernhardt in 1906, before it was completely destroyed by fire in April of 1907. This diagram is a Sanborn insurance map, and you can see the little gallery, dotted lines on it. It shows where the gallery is, it shows the outside stairs on the north side and the south side, and the scenery in the back and all. No titles were listed in the newspaper advertisements at first. Illustrated songs were also a feature of the program. Evidently, people were intrigued by the new moving pictures, and they were presented as novelties in addition to the live acts. On July 6, 1906, the young ladies of First Baptist Church arranged to have a benefit movie night at the Grand Opera House, with the proceeds going to Buckner's Orphans Home. The large crowd reported by the newspaper the next day had seen the movie shorts Penny o' Milk Please, Presence of Whales, Pipe Dreams, oh this one's got to be exciting, Sausage Factory, Troubles of a Hobo, and Cavalry Fording a Stream. The feature picture was Revolution in Russia, showing the bombardment of Odessa. Occasionally, the Grand Opera House would have movies as a regular attraction, as stated by the ad of January 3, 1907. There were to be 2 reels of extra good subjects, no titles given, that was just enough. The illustrated songs were to be sung by Miss Eunice Pursley. Admission was 15 cents. Another theater that showed movies occasionally, again with no titles given in the ads, in addition to its program of vaudeville acts, was the Lyric Theater, located in 1910 at 214 North Broadway. According to the newspaper, the first theater open to show movies primarily was the Empire, located on the south side of the square at 109 East Irwin. This theater opened Monday, March 12, 1906, so it's about the middle of the square with Broadway on the left, so it's about the middle of the south side of the square. Those who attended the first movies at the Empire saw Postman's Christmas Box, Impracticable Voyage, and Fire Cascades. Illustrated songs included Bright Eyes Goodbye, Bright Eyes Goodbye, Bathing in France, and Washing Clothes in Sicily. Anything to see movement, I guess, and something different. Admission was 10 cents. The last ad for the Empire was in the September 22nd, 1906 issue of the newspaper. It had lasted all of 7 months. On February 14, 1907, the Tyler Electric Theater opened off the west side of the square on West Ferguson, across from the old post office, which is now the Federal Building. So it's not actually on the square. An experienced electrician and machine man was engaged, and Joe McAnallen, an Irish tenor formerly with the Barlow Minstrels, was to sing. There were to be 3 shows daily. Admission was 10 cents. A newspaper ad the next day reported that the opening performances had been packed. The first movies at the Tyler Electric Theater advertised by name ran the next week, beginning February 22, 1907. They included Brannigan Sets Off the Blast, and the feature, The Tunnel Workers, was touted as the most sensational and romantic picture ever shown the people of Tyler. Again, the illustrated songs were to be sung by Joe McAnallen. The Tyler Electric Theater had ads in the newspaper consistently until October of that year, 1907, when it evidently closed. On April 3, 1907, about 2 months after the opening of the Tyler Electric Theater, another movie house opened at 123 North Spring, later the site of the Arcadia, so you have a good idea of where that was. This new theater was the Theatorium, which was to prove very popular. It was open from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m., with the shows changed daily and running continuously. It could have been called a Nickelodeon because it charged only 5 cents admission for all, children and adults alike. The opening on April 3, 1907 was reviewed in the Tyler Daily Courier the next day, the reporter stating it opened to good business in one of the prettiest movie houses of its kind in the state. The first picture listed with the title was When We Were Boys. Throughout the years of its operation, the Theatorium had modest ads in the newspaper, often on the front page. 3 years later, in June of 1910, the Theatorium was overhauled, repapered, and thoroughly refitted throughout. The front was given a new coat of paint, and additional fans were installed. Remember, this is all pre-air conditioning. It operated until April 16, 1913, when it was closed to make improvements, to quote the ad, and never reopened. The Solly brothers were listed in the Tyler City Directory as proprietors of the Theatorium in 1913, the last year it was open. With the Tyler Electric Theater and the Theatorium both opening in the spring of 1907 to enthusiastic crowds, other individuals in Tyler evidently decided to profit by the popularity of motion pictures. The management of the Tyler roller rink, and we were discussing Tyler roller rink just a little bit ago, located on East Ferguson, just east of the railroad tracks and across from the Crescent Laundry, announced that during the summer of 1907, the rink would be closed to skating and would have first-class, up-to-date moving picture shows with 3 performances daily. The program for the opening night, Monday, July 1st, 1907, was San Francisco, At the Dentist. Now, how exciting can that be? A Horse of Another Color, and The Bank King, with an illustrated song also presented, Dreaming of You. By fall, the rink was featuring skating again. 2 years later, on February 5th, 1909, the Plaza Movie Theater opened under the same management as the Lyric Theater, which was the vaudeville house mentioned earlier. We don't know exactly where the Plaza was, but a newspaper item stated that the floor of its building had been raised so that the patrons wouldn't get a crick in their necks by rubbering over a Merry Widow hat. You can remember the big hats of that time period. A room was provided for baby carriages, also a nursery and a ladies' restroom. The entire building was painted as snow white with a light blue tint for a ceiling. I guess that's Hank blue, presenting a very striking appearance. A Miss DeBode, local pianist, was engaged, and the admission was 5 cents. Movies for the following week were Christmas Carol, Wood and Pulp Industries, Christmas in Paradise Alley, and Slippery Jim's Repentance. By October 1st, 1909, there were no longer any newspaper ads for the Plaza, though the Lyric was still open for live theater. Shortly afterward, on Saturday, December 4th, 1909, a new movie house opens. So this is the Electric Palace looking east. The Electric Palace was located at 114 North College, about the middle of the west side of the square. This map, and then I'm going to do another one, and this is, we're looking north, so but it's expanded. This was expanded in 1919 to be able to seat what they say was about 1,250 people. I don't know about that, but it's definitely gotten larger. In later years, it claimed to be Tyler's leading theater. Originators, not imitators. We lead, others follow was their slogan. It had 3 arches at the front, outlined with lights, and with the name spelled out in lights that would flash on one word at a time until it said Electric Palace across the front of the building. The movies shown on that December Saturday were Marathon Craze, Gibson Goddess, which you can find on the internet and watch. I dug it out. It's 8 minutes long. That's how long movies were, 8 minutes about. Sculptor's Love, and What's Your Hurry? The admission was 10 cents for adults and 5 cents for children. Through the years, the Electric Palace also presented vaudeville acts, but it was primarily a movie house. In the early days, the theater had a $5,000 electric player piano with rolls of music sent out with the films. Later, it featured a 4-piece orchestra, and in 1919, it added a pipe organ. On April 17, 1913, the Electric Palace announced, "We take pleasure in presenting to you the latest novelty in talking motion pictures. They sing and dance, they talk and act. Scenes produced from the latest current New York success." No other details were given, but it was probably sound from an accompanying cylinder recording, because this is still 14 years before The Jazz Singer. The Electric Palace was also the theater where Birth of a Nation was shown on February 15, 1918. It had appeared 1 year earlier at the Tyler Commercial College Auditorium, which would have been just right next door. On Saturday, July 11, 1925, the Electric Palace closed for remodeling. It reopened 3 days later under the name The Palace, home of Paramount Pictures. 6 months later, on December 21, 1925, the Tyler Daily Courier-Times ran an ad stating that the stock of the Electric Palace had been sold and it was now temporarily closed. It opened again on January 1st with Johnny Hines appearing in The Live Wire This revival, though, did not last long. At the end of the month, it was announced that the palace was to close permanently. The last movie shown at the Electric Palace was The Badlands, starring Harry Carey. So passed from the Tyler scene, one of the most popular early movie theaters, having been in operation for over 16 years. So now we're up to the decade of the teens, the movie theaters that opened during the teens, adding the Hippodrome, the Broadway, and the Queen. The next movie house was the Hippodrome, opening on September 19, 1912 at 213 West Ferguson, next door to the old post office and where the Federal Building is now. On this map, you can see First Baptist on the left and Myron Schmitz on the right. It advertised itself as the prettiest playhouse in Tyler, with the best music and the best conveniences. It was a long, narrow house with marble wainscoting in the lobby and a small stage with a roll-up curtain with advertising on it. As did the Electric Palace, the Hippodrome presented vaudeville acts and burlesque occasionally, and movies its main offering. During the month of April 1913, the Hippodrome, under the auspices of the Tyler Commercial Club, showed moving pictures of Tyler. The scenes included the high school, where nearly 2,000 school children had assembled, the Methodist and Baptist churches, the general offices and machine shops of the Cotton Belt Railroad, a peach orchard, and a road scene. A newspaper item on the next day reported that hundreds were turned away from the first showing of this movie about Tyler. Unfortunately, as far as I can tell, this film did not survive. Wouldn't that be just the greatest thing to run into? It was just Tyler alive at that point. The last ad for the Hippodrome was on April 29, 1915. So there's the Tyler in moving pictures for the first time. On May 31st, 1913, about 6 weeks after the Theatorium closed at the current Arcadia site on the east side of the square, a new movie house opened at the very same site. This was the Queen. An article in the Monday, June 2nd, 1913 issue of the Tyler Daily Courier-Times reported that the Queen had had a large crowd at the opening. The building had been completely overhauled. New, elegant electric chandeliers and electric fans were provided. There was a fine Wurlitzer musical instrument operated by electricity. I mean, emphasize, if we're really uptown, we've got electricity. Producing music from 8 different instruments at one time. A future manager of the Queen wrote, "I remember when in 1920 here in Tyler, the Queen Theater with its hard-bottomed seats was a very modern theater for its time. Seating a meager 350 patrons, the interior of the theater was very dark, and the flickering, jumping picture of the small screen of unpainted sheeting was not much better. A few oscillating fans about to jump off the wall noisily buzzed away, making it difficult to even understand a spoken word with the patron in the seat next to you. Now and then, an extra loud crash of music from the Nickelodeon in the lobby would carry into the house, adding to the almost unbearable uproar. But of course, the movie, being silent, saved the day under those circumstances. The more thoughtful customer always brought his cushion with him. The automatic player piano and organ were soon disposed of, and a more permanent type of air conditioning and soundproofing was installed, all based on the theory of comfort for the patron. On May 29, 1920, the Queen installed what they called one of the most modern cooling systems of the day, a huge blizzard fan. It made 435 revolutions per minute and was guaranteed to change the air in every part of the house every minute. In October 1919, the Broadway opened at 215 North Broadway, which would make it north of the square, with Taylor Holmes starring in Taxi, and a comedy called Pearls and Peaches. The newspaper ads stated that the Broadway would have orchestra music. The Broadway closed 4 years later on August 15, 1923, with a notice in the newspaper that the serial program, which had been running at the Broadway, would be moved to the Electric Palace. On Monday night, February 2, 1925, part of the block on the east side of the square where the Queen was located was destroyed by fire, not too long after the last feature of the evening was completed. Sounds familiar, right? East side of the square, burning up. The Tyler Daily Courier-Times account the next day stated, "The Royal Confectionery was a total loss, as were two adjoining buildings belonging to Ben Rowland, one occupied by the Queen Theater and the other by the Western Union office on the 4th floor and the Alex Woldert Company on the 2nd floor." A little over a month later, on March 9, 1925, the Queen reopened in the old Broadway Theater location on North Broadway. The opening movie was Janice Meredith, starring Marion Davies. Howard Hill's orchestra gave a special concert. The new management promised entirely new equipment, a cooling system, steam heat, a pipe organ, upholstered chairs with a capacity of 450 seats. Here, the Queen offers a benefit to the Gary School Mothers Club, even though the outside of the theater hasn't been completed. So now we're up to the Roaring Twenties. And the ones that opened this decade are the Majestic and the Arcadia. After fire destroyed the old Queen Theater, the Dent Musselman interest took a 50-year lease on that same lot on North Spring with plans to build a new theater there. While it was under construction, they leased a building on the south side of the square, 113 East Irwin, and on Saturday, July 4th, 1925, opened the Majestic Theater with a Hoot Gibson starring in The Sawdust Trail. The Tyler Daily Courier-Times for Monday, July 6, reported that the Majestic had had an auspicious opening. You can see the Majestic off the back end of that float. The theater could seat 500 people, and 2,406 admissions were sold on the opening day. Throughout its life, the Majestic featured mostly cowboy movies, and it developed an unsavory reputation. By the late 1930s, many parents would not allow their daughters to attend the theater, which had become known as the Bloody Bucket. On Thursday, October 15, 1925, the newly built Arcadia Theater opened, having risen from the ashes where both the Theatorium and the Old Queen had been. It's a little later photograph, but it shows it. Douglas Fairbanks Sr. starred in Don Q, Son of Zorro. Albert Harris was featured on the pipe organ, which was followed by Mabel Lee Lawrence, When sound equipment was later installed, the pipe organ was purchased by the Catholic Church. On that opening day, the Tyler Municipal Band, all in new uniforms, performed, directed by Doc Witt, and all 600 seats were sold out. On February 13, 1929, Real Talking Movies came to Tyler at the Arcadia, which had installed both Vitaphone and Movietone equipment. Vitaphone, used by Warner Brothers, used a sound disc about 12 times the size of a phonograph record of that period. Movietone put the soundtrack on the film. The first sound feature that we had was Lights of New York, starring Helene Costello and Cullen Landis. Other talkies Tylerites enjoyed in the next few weeks were Abby's Irish Rose, starring Nancy Carroll, Buddy Rogers, and Gene Hersholt, alias Jimmy Valentine, starring William Haynes and Lionel Barrymore, My Man, starring Fanny Bryce, The Jazz Singer, starring Al Jolson, and Broadway Melody, advertised as a spectacular, all-talking, all-singing, all-dancing production starring Bessie Love. And now we're up to the 30s, which will add the Liberty and the Joy. So the Liberty is going to be on the left. It's just down from where the Majestic already is. On Friday, June 20th, 1930, after much advance publicity, the Liberty Theater opened in its present location on the south side of the square. The first features starred Eddie Dowling and Betty Compson in Blaze of Glory, a rousing, all-talking, singing, dancing musical drama. Everybody was into all singing, dancing, evidently. The following week, the features were Broadway, starring Evelyn Brent, Joe E. Brown, starring in Painted Faces, and Call of the West, starring Matt Moore. Admission prices were, for the matinee, adults 25 cents, children 10 cents, and at night, adults 35 cents and children 10 cents. In 1935, when the sanctuary of the First Baptist Church was being remodeled and the Lily Bell Wright Educational Building was being built on West Ferguson, the congregation attended church services at the Liberty Theater. The most spectacular evening at the Liberty was on Tuesday, February 13, 1940, when after much publicity, the gala East Texas premiere of Gone with the Wind was held. All seats were reserved and cost $1.25 each, 5 times the usual adult matinee price. The movie was so popular, additional matinees had to be added, and it was held over several days. Now, a friend of mine out at UT Tyler Library volunteers over at the Liberty Theater, and not too long ago, they did Gone with the Wind as one of their features. And a large family came in to watch it together with their grandparents who had met on a blind date on the opening night of Gone with the Wind at the Liberty Theater. I thought that was just great. At that same time, elsewhere on or near the square, the Queen Theater was featuring Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland in Babes in Arms. At the Majestic, the Higgins family was appearing in Money to Burn. At the Arcadia, Lloyd Nolan was starring in The Man Who Wouldn't Talk. And at the Joy Theater, Boris Karloff was appearing in The Madman Could Not Hang. The Joy Theater opened on Sunday, April 5th, 1936 at 218 North Spring, which is north of the square. We don't really think of that as being a main part of downtown Tyler, but that was the way to the railroad station. Spring Street was the way to the depot. There's the opening of The Joy, with the movie School for Girls starring Paul Kelly and Sidney Fox. And now we're up to 1940 and the opening of the Tyler Theater. So at this point, we're going to have 6 downtown movie theaters. They were the Queen, the Majestic, the Arcadia, the Liberty, the Joy, and finally the Tyler. And there's ads for all 6 at one time. The Tyler opened after much advance publicity on Friday, April 2nd, 1940 at 111 South Broadway. Everybody knows where that is. An ad in the Tyler Courier-Times each day of the preceding week read, "It is truly beautiful. From the lobby to the stage, from basement to roof, the new Tyler Theater is truly an amusement edifice of beauty, with the modern motif prevailing in a harmony of color at the sign of the rose," which was the emblem at the top of the outside of the building. The theater, advertised as the largest and best appointed movie house between Dallas and Shreveport, was opened with great fanfare. The street in front of the theater was roped off, and a special radio program was broadcast in front of the building beginning at 7 p.m., sponsored by the Tyler Junior Chamber of Commerce. The Tyler Municipal Band, under the direction of Doc Witt, gave a concert, and souvenir programs were given out to the crowd. M.E. Danborn, president of the Jaycees, introduced local dignitaries and out-of-town guests as they entered the theater. At 7:30 p.m., ceremonies began inside the theater with R.J. O'Donnell of Dallas, vice president and general manager of Interstate Circuit and Texas Consolidated Theaters, as master of ceremonies. Special guest Brian Donlevy appeared on the stage. He was on a personal appearance tour for his latest picture, The Great McGinty, and drove over from Dallas to be present at that opening. The movie offered at this opening was They Drive by Night. a story about truckers starring Ann Sheridan, George Raft, Ida Lupino, and Humphrey Bogart. Here's a list of the policies and services. They offer Governair air conditioning, air float seats, a man's smoking room, if you can imagine that in Tyler nowadays, refrigerated water fountains, and the phone number is only 4 digits long. In 1961, the Tyler Theater would host a re-release of Gone with the Wind. And in the summer of 1968, the next re-release of Gone with the Wind would appear at the Arcadia. So it appeared at all 3 of the remaining downtown theaters. The Tyler Theater was very much a part of the life of Tyler until it closed September 16, 1982. And of course, there's barely anything left of it. It's mostly a parking lot. The Arcadia closed, and the lobby had a short life as a coffee shop. And I've heard rumors from time to time that somebody's planning to do something with it. Liberty had an off and on life until it was recently refurbished to host both live performances and film, and it's well worth a visit. As far as I'm concerned, the suburban movie theaters, those out from downtown, just have never had the same feeling as the wonderful old theaters of downtown Tyler. Thank you. And I'm sure there are stories out there.